Hello, everybody. It's time for another installment on our latest series on gender, sexuality from Christian perspective. And I'd like to call this message, The Serpent Hates the Woman. And it's part 2 of our series. And I quote, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Genesis 3:15. And I quote from Revelation 12. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. We see by these texts that the serpent of Genesis becomes a dragon by Revelation. He is the enemy of all mankind, the original murderer and tempter, whose task is to alienate all men from God. But the dragon, serpent, hates women in particular. Judeo-Christian civilization has recognized the uniqueness of women. A woman is elevated by God. She is the receptacle of new life. Salvation would come through the woman. She is different, uniquely made. She has weaknesses that make her worthy of protection and dignity. She is to be shrouded in a kind of holy mystery. And there was a day when the Judeo-Christian world recognized this, and it made us a superior civilization. The rebellion currently of sexual anarchy we are seeing is an out-and-out rebellion against God himself. Women are not men. They don't belong in combat. They bear children and are to be protected and covered for that reason, among others. It is written, male and female created he them. In the image of God he created them. The devil hates women particularly because the salvation of man would be born of a woman. This is why false religion, such as Islam, is so harsh and unjust to women, using and abusing them like so much chattel. To enshroud women in the burqa in the hot climate of the Middle East is an act of suffocation. In Islamic theology, all sexual sins are virtually the fault of women, and Muhammad reported that hell was full of women and that very few women would be in paradise. Now, secularism is another false religion, and it's also satanic. It's hateful to true womanhood. What is feminism but the hatred of the truly female? It is a war on motherhood, nurture, love, and support of men, marriage, romance, and loyalty. Everything truly womanly is diminished and desecrated by progressive secularists. The greatest modern expression of the serpent's hatred of woman would have to be abortion and its twisted twin, homosexuality. Abortion is an all-out assault on the woman's privilege to be a mother and to nurture life in the sacredness of the womb. That this unholy sacrifice to Moloch is untouchable, even when the nation was sickened by films of Planned Parenthood personnel casually discussing trafficking in body parts and the ways to remove kidneys and livers from babies, is a testament to the deep spiritual defilement of our ruling elites. Who did they go after legally? The neo-Nazis trafficking in body parts as American public demanded? No, for our former president, Obama, granted a blasphemous "God bless you, Planned Parenthood," before sending in his Justice Department to prosecute the brave soul who brought these abominations to light. Soon there will be a horrifying day of accountability to all who participated in this or who supported this evil ruler. Ironically, this generation imagines that it has exalted the status of women when in truth it has ruthlessly destroyed it. Perhaps the latest example of the sad debasement and even dehumanization of women comes in the appalling transgender restroom debate. Sexual deviants are now demanding the right to define their own gender and go into the public restrooms of their own choice. Astonishingly, our leaders are giving this appalling delusion credibility. So also is corporate America. Target stores are just one of the many public places of merchandise which is announcing open restrooms according to gender preference. Incredibly, a good many middle schools are actually doing the same. The hatred for women in particular that this reveals is manifold. For example, it is estimated that there are about 0.03% of the population that identifies itself as transgender. whereas more than 50% of the population is female. The dignity and privacy of 50% of the people has been given up to please the perverse confusion of a minute fraction of the population. Now grandma or granddaughter cannot even safely retreat to go to the bathroom without the prospect of either a sexual anarchist or a bona fide predator having full right to enter at will into the restroom with her. I cannot think of a more degrading circumstance for any woman. I realize it goes both ways, but there's a vast difference between a man and a woman. To have a deranged lesbian walk into a men's room would of course be uncomfortable to most men, but it would not be near the sense of defilement that would occur should a man walk into a woman's restroom. It just isn't right. It's indefensible and an assault on something sacred to men and women alike. Most people know this, but seem paralyzed by the spiritual warfare unleashed upon all mankind at this moment. It is astonishing the number of people who take this change in stride as, quote, just the next thing we need to get used to, unquote. This is the dismantlement of ourselves as persons. There is nothing as undignified and demeaning as having to go to the bathroom in the presence of the opposite sex. There is much, much more to this than meets the eye. Perhaps Theodore Dalrymple's quote can give us some insight into what is happening here in these new indefensible rights being conferred on the lowest among us at the expense of our dignity and common humanity. And I quote, "In my study of communist societies, I came to the conclusion that the purpose of communist propaganda was not to persuade or convince, not to inform, but to humiliate, and therefore the less it corresponded to reality, the better. When people are forced to remain silent when they're being told the most obvious lies, or even worse, when they're forced to repeat the lies themselves, they lose once and for all their sense of probity. To assent to obvious lies is, in some small way, to become evil oneself. One's standing to resist anything is thus eroded and even destroyed. A society of emasculated liars is easy to control. I think if you examine political correctness, it has the same effect and is intended to." Theodore Dalrymple. And a footnote. By contrast to Obama, our current president just declared that from here on, the anniversary of the abominable Roe v. Wade decision be called Sanctity of Life Day. Thank you and God bless you.